Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome back to Zwift Fitness Journey. So today's topic is going to be upcoming game releases. As a gaming channel, it's something I'm always paying close attention to. So we're going to get an overview of some of the titles that I expect to be coming to the channel, and just other titles that I'm interested in the near future. But before we get into that, I'm going to take a look at something else, and that is what's upcoming for this series. And I'm going to do a special event that has to do with, well, American sports. You don't have to be into American sports to find this event interesting, but here's what it is that I have planned. Next week, college sports in America are a very big deal. Now, I know for most of the world, college sports isn't even a thing. But in the US, we find it a very big deal. For one thing, University of Oregon. That's the college that I attended. It's my alma mater. Last year, the University of Oregon women's basketball team was the favorite. Technically, they were ranked number 2, but that's because they played the hardest conference. And they had every chance of going on and claiming the national championship. The national championship is decided at an event nicknamed March Madness. It's a 68-team tournament, single elimination. There's a little play-in round, and then it comes down to 64, down to 32, down to 16, down to 8-4, and then a championship game. There's a men's and women's version of that tournament, and it's a massive deal that goes on for a few weeks in the US. There's a lot of sports betting, and there's a lot of even stoppages in school activities, which, I mean, come on, US? Yeah, number 1 in school? Right. No, actually, that's not the reason why we're not number 1. There's many other far more important reasons. But anyway, the March Madness tournament, it just makes a ton of money. It's hugely exciting, and we are very, very passionate about those college athletes who then become NBA or WNBA pros following that tournament, entering the draft. Not everybody, of course, but those who are good enough. And speaking of that Ducks team, 3 players, including the number 1 pick overall, 3 players from that group last year. The tournament that never happened thanks to COVID, but 3 of those players all inside the top, 8 picks of the draft. As in, 8 women from all of college basketball were drafted, 10 in the first round, and 3 of them were Ducks. Now, the tournament, March Madness, takes 68 and brings it on down. This is a bit of a teaser, but we're going to do something along those lines here on the channel. Just my opinion on the topics, but it's very much going to be up for debate, hopefully in the comment section with you. And it's going to be a cycling March Madness. So we're going to do a cycling event about that March Madness, and that will be starting up next week, and it'll take place over a couple of weeks. I won't stretch it over the 3 weeks of the tournament itself, but I will stretch it out over a couple. But for today, like I said, today's topic, upcoming game releases. Let's go ahead and get into that now. Meanwhile, I will continue to ride on, and let's even just go lightweight here, and might as well use this, and see if we can push tempo as we ride through the beautiful aquarium road.
As a small YouTube channel, there's, I'd say, 3 key things about game releases that I have to pay fairly close attention to. 1, I have a small channel. Comparatively to, say, large channels or even medium-sized channels, on a big release, AAA releases, I'm so far down the pecking order that I get no viewership at all, except for from existing subscribers. So AAA titles are almost out of the question when it comes to upcoming game releases, except for when it comes to my own personal, hey, I really want to play this game. And I do play games beyond what appears on the channel. Now, the second thing, and this is the flip side of that, is niche titles work so much better. There's fewer people posting content on it because there's a smaller audience, but because there's fewer people posting content on it, I have a much bigger piece of the pie. That comparatively goes much better. I get a decent chance at bringing an audience in. So niche games good, AAA games bad. Now, the third piece, the third element that is super important is release dates. If a series is ever going to have a chance of taking off, it's got to be upon release. Whenever I do something that's been out for a long time, there's no draw. There's no reason that somebody's going to be out searching for that content. And then as a small channel, there's no reason that they would just suddenly stumble upon mine. Those are the three factors for me, but really it's two factors. Niche games, release date. Now, some of my content, some of the games I do get from developers, either from them reaching out to me, which is rare, or myself reaching out to them. But knowing release dates and reaching out to them a little before the release date is also essential. So anyway, here's some upcoming releases. Let's begin with Ecosystem. Ecosystem is coming out here in 8 days, at least at the time of recording, so 7 days. It's just a week away. Evolution reminds me a lot of Spore, but not just the evolution of species, but it's also the evolution of the ecosystem itself. So my second title here is It Takes Two. Now this is one that I have high hopes to do on the channel and might not actually end up doing on the channel. And what this one's going to come down to is my wife. The premise is it is a married couple who ends up being shrunk down and converted into these cartoon-like characters, and then left scratching their heads and wondering why and how do we get out of this. So it's a 2-player co-op adventure, and that's a perfect fit for a married couple to do on a channel. So we'll see if she's up for that one or not. She's certainly interested in playing the game, but whether it makes it onto the channel or not is another story. My next one is Evil Genius 2. This is one of those, not quite AAA, but I think there's going to be a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of content creators putting out content on Evil Genius 2, and I may or may not join in on that. The next one, this is a huge release, so I really don't know if it'll make it on the channel at all, but Humankind is one of those highly, highly anticipated strategy games. The next one, and this is an interesting one because it is from one of the other Pro Cycling Manager content creators who happens to work as a dev with their team. I'm sure they're the one who pushed this topic. Their next release is The Cyclist Tactics. It's essentially a board game. It's a numbers game, not like numbers, so I will definitely do it on the channel. It's going to be a fun little title, and it's another cycling title, so that's nice. It's always nice to have more in the genre because there's not much to choose from. But it's more of a board game than anything else. For me, I would love to have it as a mobile game because I could totally sit down and play it on mobile. Sitting down in front of the PC, I generally want more. Next one, this is one that I really like the look of. Siege Survival Gloria Victis. It's a siege game. It's resource management. It's medieval. It's an era I like. I was a history major. There's a lot of good things, and I do like survival games. So I'm excited for that one. It's been pushed back a number of times. It was supposed to be a 2020 release. It's been pushed back to Q1 or Q2 2021. It's slated for maybe April or late March, but again, it could be pushed back further. Dice Legacy is another one that's coming out, and an interesting concept. It's a little bit of a board game, but done in a way that I think will have a bit of replayability to it, and I certainly want to do that one on the channel. It's a little bit of of a niche title that will fit in well. As a soccer/football fan, stadium renovator, really looking forward to getting in on that. That's a genre that I'm always looking at. The renovators, the house flippers, those type of games, those simulation games that they've never had the right topic for me. And I've played a little bit with some of them, and there's elements of it that I like. But getting involved at a deeper level, I think this is the title that's finally going to do that. Renovating soccer stadiums, I mean, hell yeah, that sounds like fun for me. Manor Lords is one I've really, really long awaiting, but that game's been in development for a very long time. It's going to have a wonderful, wonderful system. It's a city builder, but it's also a RTS Total War type game where you aren't going to have the combat. You are going to have the pieces, but that combat is, a lot of it is your peasants in your city that you're building up get recruited and go out and fight, and then they can die. And I love where that game is heading. Farming Simulator is a title that I've been involved in for a number of years. About 2015 was the first time I picked up Farm Sim, and I've played the last few editions, and I'm eagerly awaiting the next edition. Another one that I'm interested in and will definitely feature on the channel is Car Manufacturer. This kind of goes through the eras realistic of assembly line developing cars, trying to go for profit and increasing your tech and the size of your factory, progressing through to newer and better versions to continue making money, and then recycling that into growing your business. Next one here, going medieval. Another medieval city builder. Got quite a few on my radar. They will not all feature on the channel, but guaranteed a couple of them will make it. And yet another city builder in Viking City. That one's got that interesting twist of not being so generic compared to the others. The Viking City builder part comes in with some strategy to it, and not just the city building piece. So looking forward to that twist on the typical city builder. Hotel Magnate. Another one. You can see I do have that common theme with a lot of different simulation city builder type games. There's definitely a handful of guaranteed games on that list, but there are plenty that will never see the light of day. But that's kind of the process I go through in making those decisions, and sometimes I don't make those decisions literally until the day of. Now, here's a few other titles that I'm waiting on that aren't yet available on Steam, cannot wishlist, whatever. Ultimate General is a long-standing series now that's had 3 or 4 releases. Their next release is American Revolution. Really looking forward to that. I've done Ultimate General on the channel before, and I'm very eager to get involved in that. Of course, with my military and history background, that type of game is very much up my alley. The next editions of Pro Cycling Manager, F1, Football Manager, and then hopefully eventually the next PC version of Motorsport Manager. They've focused largely on their mobile versions since that original PC release became their big cash cow, and then they've had 3 mobile releases since then, including the latest, which is online massively multiplayer version. And so I think their next, in the scheme of things, and from what I've heard from the devs on the few announcements they've put out, that we're probably due for another PC version, hopefully next. And so hopefully they're already working on that, and we should see a new Motorsport Manager soon, because it is, especially as a sports management player and a race fan, especially an F1 fan, and cycling for that matter, but F1, Motorsport Manager is the best game in the genre by far, leaps and bounds beyond what anybody else has attempted to put out. But it's fairly aged now, and I did it on the channel for a very long time. It was on the channel day 1 when I first started up. It was my longest running series, and then I updated it with a mod, and then I started to lose the audience when I did that, and then I updated it a second time with the latest version of the mod, and sorry about that was my phone. And then eventually it just kind of ran its course. I ran myself down on audience a little bit as I made those changes. But the game is incredibly fun and so deep. but it was still missing things, some really obvious things. And they addressed a few of those in the mobile versions, but of course the mobile versions could never do what the PC game could do. They need to take what they've learned in those mobile versions, bring that into that next version, and then there's still so much more that can be addressed. And with a larger team, much larger team than what they had when they originally put out the first Motorsport Manager, start pulling that stuff together, and oh my goodness, what a game they could have on their hands. And that could be, along with Pro Cycling Manager, that could be my new bread and butter. I mean, I could be putting out content on that 7 days a week, most likely, or at least, 4 or 5 days a week for a couple of years, because it is so right up my alley. I would love what that would provide. Wolverine Studios, small game development company, sports management games, and I did a lot of their content for quite some time, and that was one of my regular rolling things, along with PCM. And Motorsport Management. That was my other big title in the early days of the channel, and I brought in a lot of subscribers through that content because I was the only one who was doing anything for Wolverine Studios. Small company, one main dev, and he's got a couple people that work with him part-time, but it rubbed me the wrong way after a while, and I needed a break. And now I've had a break. It's been more than a year. It's been maybe a year and a half since I've done any of their titles. I'm ready to get back into it, but now I need to kind of time things right. I think I'm looking for the next college basketball. That's going to be some ways off, because we're in the middle of college basketball season now, and I've already missed this release, which would have been months ago. I don't even know when exactly the 21 version came out, but looking for the 22 version. The NBA or the college football could be, maybe, but I do need to get back into that and start doing that again. Another one, Ancient Cities. Been looking for that for a long time, but that's a game that pops up and then disappears and pops up and disappears. Might not ever finish. The next farm sim, I think I mentioned already that I want to pick that up when it eventually comes out and get the timing right, but I'd have a small piece of that pie because, again, there's so many content creators there with massive audiences. That's a hugely popular game. Open world strategy game, long awaited, Hogwarts Legacy. And then finally, the last two I'm going to talk about today, Victoria 3, Paradox Development Studio. This is the game that everybody's been crying for 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years now. When is Vicky 3 coming out? When is Vicky 3 coming out? When is Vicky 3 coming out? I played Vicky 2, but the timing wasn't quite there for me. I played it after it was already old, and after EU4 was already out, and I was already hooked on that. So I didn't play a ton of Vicky 2, but I know why people were big fans of it. And I'm eager to play Vicky 3 when it eventually comes out, when they eventually do that project. My number one all-time personal favorite game is Europa Universalis 4. EU4 from Paradox Development Studio is the ultimate grand strategy. I've done it on the channel. I didn't have a huge audience because, again, game was out long before I ever brought it to the channel, but I'm a massive fan, and I've logged thousands of hours on EU4. EU5 is another one that is got to be in the near future, the next couple of years coming out, and I'm eagerly awaiting that. Now, before I just call that, here's what I'm thinking. When it comes to Vicky 3 and or EU5, it is my belief that one of them, definitely not both, and I don't know which one, but I am 95% convinced that one of those two is in production right now. And I have a lot of clues pointing towards that being the case. Without going into all of the details, because I am kind of out of time for today's discussion on this, without breaking down all of the details and all of the clues I have, and maybe bring that up again at some other time. But for me, I believe for a few reasons. One, EU4's production changed drastically over the last year. Their team, a lot of the people were moved off EU4. They did one big update. They're doing one big or two big DLCs, and they look and feel like the last. And that right there, that part follows the exact pattern of Crusader Kings 2 and then into its sequel CK3, where they did one massive update after they were already beginning production on CK3. And then some of the features of that last big massive update ended up internally put into CK3. So my prediction is they're doing the same sort of thing. Some of the team moved away. Well, where did they go? Gee, they never really talked about kind of what projects they were moving on to. It makes sense that maybe they're moving on to the sequel, but some of the stuff being worked on for the existing title is trialing for the new title. I've been highly suspect of the sudden leaving of Paradox of Jake. What's his last name? Looper. He was the project head for EU4. YouTuber. He was one of the first channels that I followed long before I ever started doing my own channel. Long before he started working at Paradox Development Studio. He began as a game tester. Now, there's a few clues that I have that I don't think he's actually left Paradox. A few clues. One, he hates Stockholm. He's from Scotland. If he truly left Paradox, why did he stay in Stockholm? Now, Jake has made it quite clear that he's not a fan of Stockholm or Sweden. If he left the company, I would say 99% most likely he would move back home to continue his YouTube content from there. Well, he was still putting out content all the while he was working there. And he is still not putting out content on a regular basis. It's more frequent than it had been before he announced that he had left Paradox. But it's still not frequent anything like what it was before. And there's no way that loss of income would make a whole lot of sense because his channel's not huge. He's still been doing things with the company. He's been hosting dev clashes and other things. My guess is he is the head of an EU5 project. That's my hunch. I don't have proof, but there's clues. There's evidence. And I believe that he's been working on EU5 in secret because otherwise it would be super obvious. EU5 is already well on its way. Doesn't mean that it's going to be out in 2021. It might not be out until 2022. I think it's ongoing.
Alright folks, well that was my short route for today. Today is kind of a recovery day for me. I had that hard ride Friday and pushed really hard to try to stay the group. Made it all to the last 10 minutes of the ride. Nearly got there. We were down to 35-40 riders from about 180 when we started, so the fact that I was still there until that late was pretty good feeling, but my legs were definitely hurting as of Saturday, and I recorded Friday, and then Saturday had a soccer game, challenging game, up against a team of 20-year-olds who are very fast, very technical, and I'm one of the youngest on my team. Did a lot to keep a lot of goals out, had a lot of blocks, but they still went ragged on us and blew us out, skunked us even. And then Sunday, another game, and the exact opposite. We did that to them. Yeah, we skunked them and scored plenty. I only took one shot in that game though. I was back in defense just to make sure that we kept a clean sheet. Something we haven't had for a long while. Anyway, that led to a continuous streak. Today being fourth straight day with high intensity workouts. So I'm still very much feeling it. And for whatever reason, I slept well over the weekend, but not last night. So extra tired for today. Anyway, I got the route done that I wanted to get done. There's a lot of bonus XP in doing that, and I kept coming up just short on finishing routes the previous 2 days, so it's nice to get to the end point this time. So look for the special series coming next week, or at least special set of days where we do our cycling March Madness. I'll lay out more details when we start that next Friday. For now, I'd love to hear your input on some of the games that I showcased. I know I ended up skipping over a few for the sake of time, but let me know, regardless, what you think in the comments. Even if I skipped over some, you should have seen at least an image of what some of the games on my short list are. But that's going to do it for today on Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button. I'll see you next time. Keep biking. Stay strong. Be safe. Bye for now.